The house was quiet, too quiet. Jungkook lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of the night. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, marking each second that passed. But sleep never came. His mind was stuck in Taehyung. On the way his voice had wavered. On the way he had lingered before leaving the room. On the way he had said good night like it actually meant something. It was stupid how much hope that gave Jungkook. With a sigh, he turned onto his side, trying to force himself to rest. But then, click. The door to his room opened. Jungkook's body tensed as he slowly turned his head. And there, standing in the dim light of the hallway, was Taehyung. He wasn't looking at Jungkook directly. His posture was stiff, his hands curled into fists by his sides, as if he was debating whether or not to step inside. Jungkook swallowed. Taehyung's jaw clenched, his eyes darting to the floor before finally landing on Jungkook. His voice was quiet, hesitant. I couldn't sleep. Jungkook's breath caught in his throat. Neither could he. But he didn't say that. Instead, he pushed himself up slightly, watching Taehyung carefully. Do you want to sit? Jungkook asked. Taehyung hesitated. Then, after a long moment, he stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Jungkook didn't move as Taehyung made his way toward the bed. And when he finally sat down on the edge, his shoulders tense, Jungkook held his breath. They had been in the same house for a while now, but this felt different. Taehyung was close enough that Jungkook could feel the warmth of his body, close enough that if he reached out, he could touch him. But he didn't. He waited. Taehyung exhaled slowly, his fingers gripping the edge of the mattress. I don't know why I came here, he admitted. Jungkook's lips parted, his heart pounding. But Taehyung wasn't done. His voice was softer now, more vulnerable than Jungkook had heard in a long time. I didn't want to be alone. Jungkook felt something in his chest tighten. He had never heard Taehyung say something like that before. Never this openly. And maybe that was why he didn't think. Maybe that was why he reached out, his hand brushing lightly against Taehyung's. Taehyung stiffened, but he didn't pull away. Jungkook let his fingers linger there, not forcing, not demanding, just offering. And after a long moment, Taehyung turned his hand over, his palm pressing against Jungkook's in a hesitant, almost shy touch. Jungkook's throat felt tight. Then don't be alone, he whispered. Taehyung didn't respond. But he didn't move away either. Instead, after what felt like forever, he let out a shaky breath and slowly, hesitantly, leaned against Jungkook's shoulder. Jungkook didn't dare move. He didn't say anything. Didn't push. Didn't ask for more. He just sat there, letting Taehyung be close. Letting him stay. And for now, that was enough. Taehyung's weight against his shoulder was light, hesitant, like he was still debating whether he had made the right choice by being here. Jungkook barely breathed, afraid that if he moved too suddenly, Taehyung would pull away. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The room was dark, the only sound coming from their quiet breathing. Taehyung's was slightly uneven, as if his mind was still racing with thoughts he wouldn't say out loud. Jungkook wanted to tell him it was okay. That he didn't have to explain. That he could just be here, in this moment, without pressure. But instead, he just whispered, "Are you okay?" Taehyung tensed for half a second before relaxing again. "No," he admitted. His voice was hoarse. Jungkook swallowed. Do you want to talk about it? Taehyung was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice so small Jungkook almost didn't hear it, he said, I hate that I missed you. Jungkook's heart stopped. His fingers curled into the sheets, his chest tightening at the words he never thought he'd hear from Taehyung's lips. You, he swallowed. You do. Taehyung didn't move. But his voice, when it came again, was laced with something fragile. I told myself I wouldn't, he said. That I wouldn't let myself miss you. That it would be easier if I just pretended you weren't there. Jungkook felt something in his throat close up. But then you were there, Taehyung murmured. And I realized I never stopped. Jungkook clenched his jaw, his grip tightening around the fabric of his blanket. Taehyung, he whispered, his voice shaking. Taehyung finally shifted then, lifting his head just slightly so their faces were closer than before. In the dim light, Jungkook could see the raw emotion in his eyes, uncertainty, hesitation, but also something that looked dangerously close to longing. Jungkook couldn't stop himself. Slowly, carefully, he reached up, his fingers brushing against Taehyung's cheek. Taehyung didn't pull away. Instead, he let out a shaky breath, his eyes fluttering shut for half a second before opening again. I don't know how to stop, he confessed. Jungkook's chest ached. Then don't, he whispered. Taehyung's lips parted slightly, his breathing uneven. He looked torn, like he was fighting an internal battle with himself. Then, before Jungkook could say anything else, Taehyung moved. He closed the distance between them, his forehead resting against Jungkook's. Jungkook's breath caught. Taehyung wasn't kissing him. He wasn't saying anything. But the warmth of his skin against Jungkook's was enough. Jungkook shut his eyes, his fingers still cradling Taehyung's cheek. This was the closest they had been in 5 years. And for the first time in a long, long while, Jungkook let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, Taehyung wouldn't leave this time. Jungkook didn't dare move. Taehyung's breath was warm against his skin, his forehead still pressed against Jungkook's. The silence between them felt heavy, like something fragile balancing on the edge of a blade. Jungkook's fingers twitched where they rested against Taehyung's cheek. He wanted to pull him closer, to close the distance entirely, to chase the warmth he had been starved of for 5 years. But he didn't. Because Taehyung was still trembling. And Jungkook knew that if he pushed too hard, Taehyung would run. So instead, he whispered, Taehyung. Taehyung's eyes flickered open, dark and unreadable in the dim light. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then, this is a mistake, he murmured. Jungkook's stomach clenched. A mistake. The word echoed in his head, sharp and unforgiving. But then Taehyung let out a shaky breath and added, and I don't care. Jungkook's heart stopped. He barely had a second to process it before Taehyung's hand came up to tangle in his hoodie, gripping it tightly as if he was afraid Jungkook would disappear if he let go. I don't know how to do this, Taehyung confessed, his voice raw. I don't know what I want. I don't even know if I should want this. Jungkook swallowed hard. But you do. Taehyung squeezed his eyes shut. Then, so quietly it was almost inaudible, he whispered, I do. Jungkook inhaled sharply. He had waited 5 years to hear that. But instead of feeling victorious, all he felt was a deep, aching sadness. Because Taehyung's voice sounded broken. Because he was still gripping Jungkook's hoodie like he was terrified of his own feelings. Because even as he admitted it, he still looked like he was about to run. Jungkook exhaled slowly, forcing himself to loosen his grip on Taehyung's face. "Then don't think," he murmured. "Not tonight." Taehyung's breath hitched. Jungkook could see the war raging in his eyes, the fear, the hesitation, the longing. For a moment, he thought Taehyung would push him away. But then, so hesitantly, so carefully, Taehyung leaned forward, his nose brushing against Jungkook's. Jungkook's fingers curled into fists. He wanted to close the distance. Wanted to kiss him. Wanted to hold him. But he didn't. Because this had to be Taehyung's choice. Taehyung's lips hovered over his. Close enough that Jungkook could feel his breath. Close enough that all it would take was a single tilt of his head. But then, Taehyung suddenly pulled back. Jungkook's heart dropped. Taehyung squeezed his eyes shut, his hands slipping away from Jungkook's woody. His whole body tensed, like he was trying to build a wall between them again. "I can't," he whispered. Jungkook's throat tightened, but he forced himself to nod. "Okay." Taehyung exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. "I should go," he muttered. Jungkook's chest ached. But he didn't stop him. Because even if it hurt, he knew Taehyung wasn't ready yet. So he simply whispered, "Good night, Taehyung." Taehyung hesitated for just a second. Then, without looking back, he left. Jungkook stared at the empty space where he had been. And even though he had promised to be patient, he couldn't help but wonder, how much longer would Taehyung keep running from him?